This is CBC Here and Now.
Tonight, the changing message about masks and evolving evidence around people without symptoms spreading COVID-19. Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain at a very quiet St. John's International Airport, air travel being the focus during this pandemic. I'm going to introduce you to two men from Newfoundland who were too nervous to get on a plane, and so they drove here from Red Deer. They got here yesterday. Carolyn?
Thanks, Anthony. Well, what's the best way to protect yourself and those around you? Well, the advice on that is changing. Here and Now's Peter Cowan is live in the newsroom. So, Peter, a lot of people have been talking about masks, wondering if we should be wearing them. What did the Chief Medical Officer of Health have to say about that today?
Yeah, not very long ago, Carolyn, the advice was there's not much point to wear them. They don't really provide any benefit. But now she says there's new evidence and some new advice about when or if you should be wearing a mask. So the advice right now from Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says there may be some benefit to wearing one in a crowded place where you can't social distance. So think things like the grocery store or public transit. There's also evidence that some people without symptoms may be spreading the virus, or it may be before they start showing symptoms. So the mask is there to protect other people, not to protect you. Because there is no evidence that wearing a mask will prevent you from getting the disease. And an important note here when we talk about masks, she's saying the mask should be homemade. They want to save the medical masks for people in the hospitals and healthcare centers who are already short on supplies. So I asked Dr. Fitzgerald today to explain why the different approach and why things are changing so quickly.
This is a rapidly evolving situation, and as we learn more about it, the information is going to change and the advice is going to change. We've said that from the beginning. I don't think this is out of keeping with that. So as the information about asymptomatic transmission has come forward, I think this is in response to that. It is another way to help protect those around you. It is not something that we're mandating, but certainly for people who want to be responsible and want to try to protect those around them, it's an option.
As she said there, it is an option, so it's not required for you to wear a mask when you go out to places like the grocery store. And it does not replace things like physical distancing and hand washing. Dr. Fitzgerald reminded everyone today that those are the two key things that are going to prevent you from getting COVID-19, Carolyn. Thanks
so much, Peter. That's Here and Now's Peter Cowan reporting live. And speaking of masks, the president of the province's largest union is raising what he calls grave concerns over the availability of personal protective equipment for workers. And that includes the supply of masks and other items like gloves and hand sanitizer. Jerry Earle says members are also upset over the conflicting messages from the health department and the regional health authorities.
We're quite aware there is not only a shortage in Newfoundland, Labrador, there's a shortage across North America, across the globe, with many pieces of personal protective equipment. But what we're concerned about is the messaging that's going out there. As late as last evening, we received a communication from Health Community Services, from high-level officials, saying that all people now in healthcare environment, in home care environments, providing services, should have at least a surgical mask with a face shield or vision protection, eye protection. And we know, based on a call then this morning, that equipment is not necessarily available.
So what's the health minister saying about this? John Haggie addressed some of those concerns at the briefing this afternoon.
The important thing from our point of view is to make sure our frontline workers are protected appropriately. But equally, our other issue is to make sure that our challenged supply chain is used appropriately, because we don't have any margin for inappropriate use or wastage or hoarding.
Well, meantime, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau outlined some details today about new medical equipment, including ventilators and masks, and where the country will be getting it. Here's some of what he said.
To keep our frontline workers safe and care for Canadians with COVID-19, we need a sustainable, stable supply of these products, and that means making them at home. With our plan to mobilize industry, we're helping companies retool, repurpose, and innovate to fight COVID-19. We've already signed letters of intent with a number of partners to produce the things we need.
Well, now to the numbers. There's a slight increase in the number of new cases in the province today. It's the smallest one-day increase in more than 2 weeks. Just 2 new cases announced today, one in the eastern region, one in central. That brings the total to 228 cases. Now, 7 people are in hospital, 2 of them in ICU, and 49 people with COVID-19 have now recovered from the illness. Now, the province's chief medical officer says even though the increase is small, it's not cause for celebration.
This is a sign that we've had 2 cases in the last 24 hours, or since the last media advisory, and that is all. There are going to be days like this that we only have a few cases, and then there are going to be days where we have more. We are at the very beginning of this, and I would caution anybody from trying to read too much into today's numbers.
And Dr. Fitzgerald also spoke today about the evolving evidence around COVID-19 and how it spreads. Today, she spoke about the role people without symptoms can play in spreading the virus.
Based on new learnings from other countries and analysis of transmission patterns, recent studies have shown that the virus can be transmitted from a person infected before they develop symptoms. This is referred to as pre-symptomatic transmission. There is also evidence that some people infected with COVID-19 who never develop symptoms are also able to transmit the virus. This is called asymptomatic transmission. While it is unknown at this time the extent to which pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic transmission is taking place, we do know that it is occurring among people in close contact or in close physical settings. The vast majority of transmission of COVID-19 occurs when individuals have symptoms such as coughing, fever, aches and pains, and headache. To prevent transmission of COVID-19, here is what we know is proven. Staying home unless it is essential to go out, physical distancing, washing your hands, protecting the most vulnerable from infection and exposure to others, and covering your cough with tissues or your sleeve. These measures will work to reduce the spread of COVID-19, whether or not someone has symptoms, and it is critical that these measures continue.
Okay, so Anthony joins us now. He's live at the airport in St. John's. And Anthony, still lots of people arriving there every day and then going into self-isolation. But as you found out, not everyone is comfortable with flying as a mode of travel.
No, absolutely. There's some people you forget they come here by ferry, and I was going to start off by saying, so there's this bayman and a townie, and they buy a car in Red Deer, and if it weren't for a pandemic, this would sound like a joke, but it's actually a true story about 2 guys who wanted to come home. And I met up with Andrew Ivany about an hour outside of St. John's in a cabin where he was starting to self-isolate, and he told me he was taking every precaution, as he and his buddy Rocky did all the way from Red Deer, and he wrapped his face as we started our interview, and I kept my distance. So Andrew, tell me the thinking behind buying a car instead of getting on a plane.
Well, we've been talking about it for a while. Just the risk I thought would be too great, you know, and not to mention resources are pretty strained right now. You know, the last thing they need is someone else just coming through, you know, cross-contamination is not what we wanted to do. So we just decided to stick together and avoid people, and yeah, and just...
So you figured driving, your chance of getting infected would be lower?
We figured so.
So you leave Red Deer, you managed to get to eastern Newfoundland. Walk me through the drive.
We originally intended on taking the north part, the highway, going through all small towns and taking our time. But, you know, it just got to a point where it was like we should probably just stay on a highway. Coming into Quebec, we got stopped by 2 military personnel, and they had advised us that no one could pass through that border crossing.
So a checkpoint within Canada?
Yeah.
What was your reaction?
It was surprising. Like, it almost felt like I was in an episode of the X-Files. You know, it was 2 military personnel there. They just asked where we were going and where we were coming from,
right,
and then just advised us on the best route. You know, they didn't want us driving through any major populous places where we can stop. They want us going around Quebec. So.
Oh, okay, so they give you a wide route to take up through northern New Brunswick.
You bet, yeah.
So when you hit New Brunswick, what happened then?
Right before we left Quebec, there was another military checkpoint. This time there was quite a few military personnel. This is right before there was a detour came off the highway. They just stopped all vehicles and just asked pretty much the same questions.
So you get to the ferry. What happened there on the Nova Scotia side, Cape Breton?
It wasn't too bad actually. It didn't seem too congested there whatsoever. I mean, the only thing I noticed was just a lot of trucks.
So you're facing your 14 days now?
Yep. Well, we were isolated before we even started this trip.
You've had a good career for 10 years working in the oil patch. When do you think things will normal up so you can go back and keep earning good money and then come home when you want?
Well, it's hard to say. I've been through a few recessions in Alberta, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. So, I mean, only time will tell. Right now, my priority is to be, safe and to keep my family safe and be here for them.
Okay.
So, and I say a lot of Newfoundlanders feel the same way.
Well, now to some economic news. Hibernia could stop drilling for up to 18 months. It's the crown jewel of our offshore and helped stabilize this province following the closure of the cod fishery in the early 90s. Now, there are questions about how low oil prices and the COVID-19 pandemic will affect the Hibernia platform offshore. Terry Roberts reports.
Brace for more trouble in the oil industry. ExxonMobil has announced billions in spending cuts, and it looks like Hibernia will not escape the axe. Hibernia management is evaluating options to reduce capital and operating expenses. There are no plans yet to suspend or reduce production, but sources tell CBC drilling from the platform could be suspended for up to a year and a half. That all the wells are drilled at Hibernia and production could continue for months without the need for well overhauls. And what about the plan for one, possibly two subsea tiebacks? Costly expansions that would add years of production and much needed revenue. That's also unclear because Hibernia management is not saying. But ExxonMobil is promising that any changes will not affect safety. Hibernia is what launched this province's oil industry, has contributed billions to the economy since first oil in '97, and it employs 1,400 people, mostly from this province. But oil prices have gone in the tank. Consumption is way down because of COVID-19, and increased production around the world has created a serious oversupply. And there's another looming problem. Companies are running out of space to store their oil. There's just too much in the market. And insiders are starting to wonder whether offshore installations like Hibernia might have to reduce or even suspend production because there's nowhere for it to go. That will be another sharp blow for a province already reeling from a financial crisis and a societal shock from a worldwide pandemic. And keep in mind that the Terra Nova oil field has not produced any oil for more than 3 months. But there is one positive note. Equinor has confirmed that this drill rig, the Transocean Barents, will leave for the Flemish Pass very soon to begin exploring for oil. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, in other news, there is new information tonight on a homicide in the Goulds area of St. John's. Police say they don't believe it was a random attack. The 20-year-old man died last Thursday night, apparently from a stabbing. There are few details available about what happened, but police say there is no need for the public to be worried about the incident. The Royal Newfoundland Constabulary has yet to say whether there are any suspects or arrests in the case. The force said the man was found seriously injured near a home on Sunset Street in the Goulds. Well, the garbage dump in St. John's has reopened after an overnight fire. Crews were called to Robin Hood Bay landfill just before midnight to deal with a large blaze. Firefighters spent the next 6 hours pouring water on the fire before it was extinguished. There was no damage to any of the structures at the landfill, but there was a delay in the site being open today. The fire also resulted in garbage collection being canceled for the day in Logie Bay, Middle Cove, Outer Cove.
It's the last and brightest supermoon of 2020. Are we going to be able to see it? I'll have all the details on your forecast coming up.
Welcome back. We've been showing you some of the parades taking place around the province to honor frontline workers, but the province is now asking people to stop those parades. Parades like this one have become common as communities and volunteers want to thank essential workers still on the job during the pandemic. But the government says these events can still put people at risk because it gives them an opportunity to mingle and interact. It's asking municipal governments and groups to discourage people from these types of public events.
We have had concerns expressed from the point of view of the fact that these motorcades originate somewhere and end somewhere, and that at those beginning and end points, again, you've got the kind of parking phenomenon I've alluded to with other things, teens, adults in coffee shop parking lots, where social distancing, physical distancing is breached and not observed. And again, that is a cause for concern. That is the kind of place where inadvertent transmission of the virus is going to happen. If you have face-to-face contact with people, that's when the virus moves. It moves if you move. You don't move, it doesn't move.
Well, parades are no longer allowed, but take a look at this long line of vehicles in Paradise today. The town opened up its depots so people could drop off their recycling. Residents had told the town they were running out of space at home to store it, so the town put some rules in place requiring people to maintain the proper physical distance and remain in their cars until they're inside the unloading area. The town says it plans to offer recycling drop-offs several times, or drop-offs each week. Ashley is here now with a look at the weather forecast, and I see that you've stepped outside this evening. Looks like there might be a few light flurries on the go there. A little bit of sunshine too.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of everything today. What's falling is actually a mixture of flurries and graupel, which is just a really soft snow. But yeah, temperatures today not too bad across the board. Pretty seasonal for this time of year. Let's take a look at those daytime highs. We sat around 2 degrees here in St. John's, and then we've got temperatures towards the west coast a little bit cooler. 0 degrees is the temperature in Corner Brook this afternoon, and then for Lab City currently, or rather saw a high near -6. So if you take a look at the weather setup, we do have a large area of low pressure rotating counterclockwise. We've been under its influence for the last couple of days, and we're going to not see the last of it as we head through the day tomorrow. So certainly still going to be an unsettled afternoon. Evening-wise, though, it actually looks pretty nice, and that's good news because we're going to see the last and brightest supermoon of the year. It's the super pink moon, and it gets its name because pink moss normally springs this time of year, or in the springtime rather. So yeah, it looks like a lovely evening. Anytime after 6 or 7 o'clock rather, we'll see that moon start to rise, and with partly cloudy skies, it looks like a nice evening for it. Not going to rule out the chance of flurries though, certainly on the west coast at times through the evening, and up through northern portions of Labrador. We're still looking at some heavy snow tonight and some strong winds. So snow and blowing snow, the story, with wind gusts between 60 to as much as 70 kilometers per hour. We'll see that snow spread a little bit further west as we head into the early morning hours. But overall, looks like a pretty nice evening. Now into, as far as snowfall goes, we are looking at anywhere from 10 or 5 to as much as 15 centimeters of snow from Rigolette to Nain. Otherwise, just flurries on the west coast, but could see somewhere between a trace to as much as 5 centimeters of snow. It's tomorrow that we'll see potentially, there's not great agreement, but potentially we could see you know, some heavier snow at times through the interior, even the northern peninsula, or rather the northern portion of the Burin Peninsula. You can see there. I doubt that we're going to see that much snow, but again, that risk's still in there through the afternoon. So Here's the timing of that snow, potentially going to see it in the southwest, spread towards the interior as we head into the early afternoon, and then eventually towards eastern portions of the island. The Avalon will probably see a few flurries through the day. The heavier snow, or potentially heavier snow, will move in towards the early morning hours. So here's where we'll be sitting temperature-wise, generally around seasonal for this time of year, 0 to 2 degrees with some sunshine in the mix and breezy, 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. But it's into Thursday that actually looks like a pretty nice day. Areas along the west and eastern will probably see some snow, but central looks nice, and we'll see snow pretty much through most of Labrador as well through the day. That next area of low pressure that moves in will bring some snow to the west and likely rain to the east. So here's where our temperatures will be sitting. Again, not much movement, above 0 for the most part. Happy Valley Goose Bay, you're looking at a high near 1 degree on Thursday. So just before we leave you, or at least I leave you, I want to show you the sunset of Fox Island River on the Port-au-Port Peninsula. Kathy Leroux sent us that great shot. Thank you for that. And if you have any weather photos to share with us, send them to nophotos@cbc.ca.
Another stunner. Thank you so much, Ashley. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Welcome back. Well, tomorrow there will be a change in the government's usual daily medical briefing. It's scheduled for 6 p.m. Newfoundland time rather than the usual 2 o'clock it's been lately. Now, Here and Now will have that special live, so we'll actually be starting the news at 5:30 Newfoundland time tomorrow and stay on the air until 7 at night when that briefing is supposed to be over. So now let's move on to some more news from the briefing today. This weekend is the Easter long weekend, typically a time to spend with family and friends. Health Minister John Haggie says going into the Easter weekend, everyone needs to rethink how they'll be spending the holiday to ensure public health protocols are being met.
For others, it's more of a family occasion, and it always seems to relate to food. It's fish and chips or it's turkey at Nanny and Pop's. But really and honestly, this year we need to do things differently. We really do, because the problem with all of these events and our entire approach is that they are predicated, they're built around gatherings of people. And we all have, over the last 3 weeks, gone to some great lengths to say these gatherings are now dangerous.
Well, here's something cute to end off on. Late last month, the Prime Minister used his daily news conference to speak directly to children, and a Winnipeg dad and his 2 sons thought it would be pretty cool to do something a little bit different with that. Just have a look.
I want to thank you all for helping us slow the spread of COVID-19. And to all the kids out there, all of a sudden you've heard you can't go on play dates or have sleepovers. Your playgrounds and
That's Tyler
schools.
Walsh and his sons Jack and Noah making this stop action Lego video. They shared it online. Tyler says they built everything and then moved it little by little, taking pictures all along the way. Now their creation has gone viral in the good old-fashioned way. Even the Lego group retweeted it. So thanks so much for joining us tonight, everyone. Next is news from CBC Nova Scotia.